Women That Lead presents Our Leading Edge, featuring your host, Jenna Forster, Mastermind Executive Coach, inspiring women to lead with alignment, passion, and purpose through conversations that inspire. Stretch yourself to a new level. Learn, grow, expand. And now, here's your host, Jenna Forster.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to Our Leading Edge. It's a beautiful February morning, and the sun is shining where I am at. I hope that you are also having a great February day wherever you are. I don't want to count the chicks before they're hatched, but it feels like spring where I'm at, so I love it. Welcome to the show today. We are going to be speaking about how we build our own barriers, and I'm excited about this phone call and this podcast because this is an interesting conversation to me. I have done a lot of personal work around this and clearly done a lot of work with clients and had a great deal of conversation with colleagues around this. And one of my favorite people to speak about this topic with is George Gabara, and he's going to join me today, and I'm going to introduce him in just a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I want to give you a little bit more insight on what we're going to be covering today, because I love that George is here and that he's going to include his personal experience around how we may be keeping ourselves locked in our own little boxes. We all build boxes that we call our lives, and we like to be in them, and they're very safe and they're very comfortable, although very uncomfortable at the same time. So we're going to speak a little bit today about how do we as people move a little closer to who we really are and to bring that person or that being forward. So George, before I bring you in, I want to just tell our guests a little bit about you so that they can get an understanding of you. I love what you do because you're a business leader and you're also a former wilderness guide, so that you've got this great integration of ideology around what you do. You coach people, you mentor them. George really inspires hundreds of people to uncover what he calls the hidden light in themselves and their surroundings, and we're going to speak a little bit about that. George states that he's in his greatest flow state when he challenges others to seize the opportunities that are around them, but not always clear. And I am in great agreement with that. I think that we do fog the mirror of our life quite a bit. And what I like about George is that he helps people to connect to that deeper self. And that's really where the real power to move mountains lies. And I love that you say the power to move mountains, George, because of your background and your understanding in that. So, George, welcome to the show. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you, Jenna. This is exciting, and it was a pleasure to get the invitation to come and join you on this format. So
absolutely, yeah. And one of the things that I know you're going to bring today, and a lot of our listeners are going to enjoy, is you're just a very real person, and you and I have had this conversation about the need for real conversation and how there's a shift in that. While we're not going to cover that specifically on this call, I think that the listeners will be able to understand that. You call yourself an open book, and I'm going to ask you to share a little bit about yourself today so that the listeners can understand that. But before we start, I am a big advocate of the idea that we think equal to everything that we know, and our surroundings or our environment, whether that be people, places, or things, are equal to that. So we really do, as a human being, as a person, we set the stage for our life to look a certain way, and it is based on beliefs, habits, patterns, things that we build in our lives, and the idea of us and how we project that out. I'd like to start, if you're willing, for you to talk about your personal experience with that and some of the things that have happened, to you, for you, with you, from that place, because I know that you have worked through that whole understanding. Is that all right, George?
Oh, absolutely, Jenna. I'm, as you say, I'm an open book, and I think that's. I've had lots of feedback over the years as a guide. The successes that I've had in the wilderness, very immediate feedback loops when you're out leading, guiding people, in the wilderness and you're moving about. And a lot of what I did was in kayaks in far-flung places like Tonga and the Bahamas and the Queen Charlotte Islands, now Haida Gwaii. And you just needed to be real. It was through my 20s and mid-30s, up through my mid-30s. I did a lot of growing because I was with people who were, I'd say, more mature than me in many ways. So it was very important to figure out quickly how to be a good leader. And what I discovered was that just being real and not trying to perform through the veil of the ego was probably the most important thing for me to be successful in that realm, and that's been the springboard for me.
And I think that's such an important piece for people to hear is that the performing through the ego, because I know for myself, again, around the same time frame, age frame, even into my 40s, I do believe that I was always feeling a need to perform and to be someone that I thought everybody else expected me to be. And that came at a deep cost to me. I know that you'll share your piece of that, but it took me a really long time to understand that I was performing and that most of the actions, decisions, thoughts, feelings, all of that were happening for me were actually based on other people's needs. And I had built this tower of a life that I believed I was supposed to be in. And once that tower comes tumbling down, then things get really real, really fast. And I think that's where the beauty of life really lives, is when we can look at our life from a different perspective. So can you share with the viewers what that looked like for you in that movement?
Absolutely. I think when we're talking about these filters that we constantly wrestle with, and I think those filters come solely through the ego. And recently, if I quickly cut to the chase of my recent history, is I've been playing with entrepreneurship and my businesses over the years, and I'm trying to figure out, as many of us do, what our main purpose is. I felt, though I knew what my purpose was, I felt like I was sitting on my hands, and then as recent as 3 months ago, I had a heart attack, which was a crazy, unexpected event, as life sometimes presents itself in weird, mysterious ways. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me confront and look really deeply at the filters that I had placed on my own life, and those are those boxes that you talked about and you referred to in the introduction. So I'm really on a very exciting path, and it came through something that was potentially almost put me in the ground, 6 feet underground.
Incredible. And I do believe, I used to be the individual that was always trying to be proactive and help individuals and inspire individuals before they had to have a wake-up call. But I'm really starting to understand that sometimes the wake-up call is the catalyst. And without the wake-up call, unfortunately, some of us, and I say us because I'm included in that, will not recognize the forest for the trees. And I think that I love that you've shared that wake-up call that you had, because while we can have these conversations and help individuals shift and take a greater, my whole goal is to inspire others to own their own life. And it's based on my own personal experience and knowledge base. And I think you come into the world in the same way, because we have deep reasons for staying where we are at. we have deep reasons, and sometimes until that wake-up call is front and center, we don't project ourselves in any way other way than what we know. Can you talk a little bit about that and your experience with that?
I think I can sum it up for me in a really simple way. Often my biggest justification was time. Oh, I don't have enough time. If I had the time, or if I had the money, which is for me just another representation of storing my time, I would wholeheartedly be this other person. I would be the person that I really want to be. And since I had this heart attack, I've realized that it isn't about time, it isn't about money, it is about one thing, and it is about clarity, and clarity of mind. And the things that I didn't have time for, I have made time. Time isn't even the issue now. It's really about clarity. And I've made wholesale changes in my life to the effect that I'm doing not only one or two of the things that I've wanted to do, I'm doing all of them. And I'm being clear, and I'm being okay with it all. It's crazy, and it's a profound shift. Let me put it that way. But it has nothing to do with time and money. It has everything to do with being clear about what it is and touching that inner ground source energy.
And I think something does definitely happen. I know it happened for me, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, is, you call it an integrated life. And for a lot of us, and I've spoken about this on a previous show with another guest also, is we compartmentalize our lives. I know when I get overtaxed, overstressed, over quote-unquote busy, I can fall back into that, where we have work, we have family, we break down our life into these little boxes, and we keep them there, and then we act a certain way according to what role we're currently playing. And I love your philosophy and the movement that you've made on what does it mean to you really to live that integrated life. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. With this heart attack that happened, it made me really think about the loss that I would have with my family, and not seeing my daughter grow up, and it really made me stop and think more deeply about legacy, and not in an egotistical way of I need to make my mark in the world, but more in the way of, my God, I've come to the end of my life, and what have I accomplished? What light have I brought? And so it started me on a path of thinking about how do I disentangle from needing to have a regimented, fully compartmentalized life, as you described, not being in the boxes. So an integrated life to me is going, okay, rather than seeing my life as a career-driven event, I look at my life now more as a project, interest, values-driven manifestation. So the integration happens. I want to pass on my knowledge. What are the things that are most near and dear to me? I look back to experiences that I had in Tonga and connecting with people at a very deep level, and I want my daughter to experience that. So I think the trick and where the issue of integration comes in is how do I monetize doing things in my life that reflect my values and can make my work part of my not separate necessarily my family life from my work. A great example of this is a friend of mine from the Rockies who is just finished producing a National Geographic series where they chronicle his a great traverse across the Asian continent with his young family and the trials and tribulations. It's a film, it's a series, and I think that's a great example of integrating your life, teaching your kids, and actually making a living at it. So those are the questions that I've been sort of sitting down to really grapple with and make sense of.
Mm-hmm. And I think that for some that can sound a little bit heavy and almost a weight that says, "Oh, I need to make something of myself. I need to make something of my life." And we're not solely speaking about individuals that are in the personal development field. We're talking about everybody, and that's, I think, something that's very important for everyone to hear. If we can slow down enough and not build these illusions or limits on ourselves of I need to, I don't have time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the money,
the experience.
Right. So if we focus more on that question of a lovely, great word of experience, what experiences do I want to create in my life, and what things do I, what things am I passionate about, what things do I care about? You've mentioned values. What are those things that I hold near and dear that I really want to make sure that there's attention and awareness being spent to that? And really there is a beautiful dance that comes from that when we can get out of our own heads and out of the stereotypical need of, well, I must have this or this or this, and really start to come from, the word inspiration is coming up for me. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you come from one place and now you're really thinking about your life differently. And all of those limits that you had put on yourselves, which limits are an illusion, we create them to keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely.
And we spend a lot of energy there, which is the unfortunate part. If we can release that energy and put it into these things that we truly care about, life does shift and it does move and we can create. What do you have to say about all that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we all wrestle with, how do we make a living? How do we pay our mortgages? And I think those stresses force us to stay in our boxes. But if we really reverse engineer what it is that we want, we can usually have what we want if we let go of some of those preconceived notions of what it means to be successful or create a living. And that's what I've been trying to redesign in my life, especially in the last few months. And I think one of the keys for me has been just to have faith and dig a little bit deeper into the fear to try to understand it. And when you really uncover it, I think a lot of times you find that it's really not that scary.
That's the truth.
I have been a firm believer all my life of diving in the deep end, and if some of my friends hear this radio show, they'll be nodding in affirmation because they've seen me do things that are just like, what is he doing now? And a lot of the things that I've jumped into have been just out of pure ignorance. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do the things that I did. And that's the beauty of how young people jump out into the world, and I want to recapture that beginner's mind and start to live through a more real, open space.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you bring up that whole piece about beginner's mind, because there's nothing more powerful, and I know it's been said over and over the years, but there's truly nothing more powerful than a changed mind. I think as people, we try to change our environment, we try to change the people in our environment, we try to change something about ourselves, whether it be our looks or anything that can be in that frame. We try to slap band-aids on our lives, because if we can change some aspects of our lives, we feel like we are creating change. But that's not actually true. Those things are an after effect instead of the leading driver. And when we can, what I'm hearing from you is a real change in mindset. When we can change our mindset, then our life naturally shifts in a direction, and there's nothing more powerful than that. So shifting from going through life with your brakes on because of fear, rather than creating the life you want based on those things that are near and dear to you and what you would like to do. Big shift.
Yep, absolutely. You know, I've a lot of my hang-ups and my roadblocks have been fear-based. Others have been other roadblocks have been having a fixed mindset. For instance, I think I had a fairly glamorous youth. I was successful in school. I didn't have to study hard. I did well as an athlete. I was a performer, and I got into my adulthood, and I think I definitely was one of those folks who hid behind what I thought was my charmed life. How do I put it in another way? I stopped being open because I thought the world should be laid before my feet because I was so good at certain things. So rather than practice and do the work, I avoided the work, and it's kind of a crazy psychology, but I fell into a place of expecting to do well, so I avoided some of the work that was required to actually advance and perform at a higher level. So that was one of my hang-ups. And you read stories of Michael Jordan, for instance, who has been called one of the greatest learners in his arena of sports. All his coaches refer to him as the greatest learner that they ever had under their tutelage. And that's having a mindset of constantly being open, having that beginner's mind, and that's I think that's where we need to sort of look at where we're at with our mindset, and that's just one of the roadblocks, I think.
I agree completely. I think one of the beginning steps to anything is curiosity, and you're calling it the beginner's mind, and that piece about just being curious and open, because when we can recognize what we are accepting in our lives due to our own self-imposed barriers, our life really can open up like a blossom or a flower. It can really open up and get some more energy into it, and you can watch yourself really shift in a direction that provides you more sustenance. Like, it gives us this foundation to who we are on our real core that we are then able to open up even further. So it's a process and a project, I love that, where we can keep opening and opening and opening and opening, and then the things that we're moving away from trying to escape things, that fear-based, and
Absolutely.
we're actually right? We're actually now able to start creating things.
Absolutely. I mean, even in this call, Jenna, 5 minutes ago, rather than really listening, you start having this inner dialogue. Oh, what am I going to say next? What's expected of me on this call? And that's where I'm needing to stop myself and go, you know what? I don't need to perform. This is just me. This is a real conversation with Jenna, and be real, like you're describing earlier. And I think that starts to speak of great teachers out there now, like Marianne Williamson, who just talk of coming from a place of depth to be in the world in the moment, and that's what I'm trying to achieve in my life right now. So wrestling with the things around us in our careers, like time management. Time management for me is it's an oxymoron. I don't even think of. I think the paradigm for me is kaput. It really doesn't mean much now, because I don't see it as managing time as much as I, like I said before, just managing my clarity and just being aware of where I'm at in the moment and being present in the moment.
That's a pretty big shift from always projecting forward.
I think so. I think it's important for us just to step back sometimes and relax into ourselves. And I think when you relax deeply enough, you break through the barrier of the ego, and you start to dive deeper into the ground source, that the spirit that we all have in us, and that's what I want to keep promoting. I think we're at a place in the world where there's a lot of heightened emotion around politics in the media. I don't spend a lot of time dwelling on the current topics. I'm certainly aware of them, but I try not to let myself get emotionally entwined, because I think for every scary situation, there's also situations where the tide is moving in the opposite direction, and there's just unbelievable things happening in the world today in terms of enlightenment and awareness, and we have scientists, as recent as the 1990s, where we thought, we were in the 90s, we thought we were at the height of scientific maturity in some ways, and it was projected then that it would take 50 years to sequence the human genome, and it was done in a quarter of the time. We're at a place now where we're about to dive even deeper into flow state and how our mind works with our spirit. It's a very exciting time. So maybe I'm going a little further off topic than we wanted, but I think that's where it all comes from. To be honest, is connecting with our inner spirit.
And I think what you're speaking about is you're really speaking about potential and opportunity, and that's what really it is what we're speaking about here, right? We when we can slow down enough and recognize some of our own limiting behaviors and the barriers that we may set in our lives, then we can then recognize and pay attention to the right things. So you were speaking about time management, and I think you've known me long enough to know that I that's a bunch of horse to me. There is no such thing as time management. We all have the same amount of time. It's really about priorities management. And when we can get clearer on what our priorities are, then we can spend our time there. And the other thing that's coming up for me when I listen to you is that it's the whole energy piece on where do we want to spend our energy, and we can really start to look around on who, what, where, and when pulls energy from us and drains us, and who, what, where, and when feeds us and increases our energy. And that's a great place to start. And I think even when you're speaking about scientific movement that's happening, somebody started somewhere. Somebody started this. We have the ability to start in our lives and to create what it is that we want, not based on those old barriers that we've set up to keep ourselves in our own little box of our life, but actually more expansive than that, because that's what drives all of this stuff. And I love what you said about not putting your attention over here on the negative, but putting your attention over here on what is truly possible and the potential of that. So I think it's great that you pulled that in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I use the example of time management, for instance, I've gone through the exercise of logging time. Where is my time being spent, and keeping it on sort of a time management level, and having the Stephen Covey time management logbooks to help sort of gear that. But I found I've simplified it into I block my time. I'm not managing it so much as what you describe as priority management, values management. Now I have the habit. It took just a little bit of discipline to start, and even the topic of discipline is another one that I've kind of rearranged in my mind. I don't need to be disciplined. I need to have a small amount of discipline to get me to the place where I've created a habit. And one of the places that I've found that I have been able to squeeze more out of my day is I've created the habit of having I wake up earlier. Getting more exercise, but that morning stretch of time for me, I've got about 6 hours, and I do more now before 10 a.m. than I did a year ago for the whole day. That's incredible for me. And that's just a shift in perception, really, not necessarily a shift in time management, or I became more structured or more disciplined. Nothing to do with discipline, other than just creating the habit to begin with. I created the habit, and I value that time so much that I don't answer emails. I don't look at my phone. I don't look at my smartphone at 5 in the morning. I leave it plugged in, turned off, it's out of my life. And then after lunch, or like this morning, I needed to talk to you. Obviously, I'm not stuck in a box, but typically if I need to get something done, I focus on it in big chunks of time, and I don't get wrapped up in 15-minute increments anymore, because I was in that pattern for years, and I just found it didn't work.
That's right. It's very, very draining. And again, I'll say it again for the listeners. There's nothing more powerful than change in your mind. A changed mind changes lives. Seriously, just can't drill that in enough. So, George, we're going to wrap this up. What do you think? What do you want people to hear from you to end this call and to take something away there?
I really think that we all just need to realize that we spring from the same energy source, and for some people that might sound airy-fairy, but when I put my focus on that, it tends to liquefy my ego, which is important. I think the ego's a good thing, but to have a healthy sense of sameness, I think, is more important and really more effective in creating a higher level of performance in your life and your business. That's my main message, and that's my go forward as a coach.
That's fantastic. And I thank you so much for sharing your own personal story and your experiences and your beautiful insight on the subject matter. I think it's just so great for people to hear and to hear the real deal. So before you go, can you just share with the listeners how they can find out more about you, get a hold of you if they have any comments, questions, find out more about what you do?
Absolutely. I'm definitely off in a few different directions. I've got a couple businesses on the go, but one that I'm really excited about is I'm definitely doing wilderness retreats for I'm primarily aiming at the corporate world because there's lots of cash there, and it's a good business model, and just reflecting on how my business went before in the wilderness environment. I'm excited about that direction because I'm integrating that. I've got a trip going to Nepal in the fall, and I'm going with a filmmaker, and I'm going to take a group with me, and it'll be a very intensive mind hack in exercise, in giving back. There's a lot of destruction that happened in Nepal, and we're going over to dip our toes and see how we can help and create some story around a little bit of a journey. So
Beautiful.
That's where we're headed.
Beautiful. And for anyone that wants a little bit more information, I know George has a Facebook page. It's Hidden Light, it's called. So you can find him there, and you can find him on Twitter. He's everywhere. So lots of great information that can come with getting a hold of George. And so thank you, sir, for carving out some time. I know today is Family Day, so I appreciate that you stepped on this show.
An auspicious day.
That's right, for 40 minutes or so. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening, and join me next time, which will be the last show for this on our leading edge. It will be February 22nd, and I'll be posing out some opportunity for all of you to ask questions of me, and then perhaps I can give you some more insight on what you're specifically looking for. So join me next time, February 22nd. And again, thank you, George. Thank you for being with me. And to all of the listeners, you have yourself a great rest of your day.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Jenna. That was great.
Thank you for joining Jenna on today's program, Women That Lead, Our Leading Edge. For more information regarding today's show or on any of the programs Women That Lead offers, please visit www.womenthatlead.com. Until next time, lead with alignment, passion, and purpose.